Hey everybody, Potato Spud here, back with another hero design concept video. This marks the second episode of my small Overwatch Hero concept mini-series. For those who don't know what this series is about, here I'd like to talk about my ideas for potential Overwatch characters in a brief 30-minute format to the best of my ability. In this particular episode, I'd like to introduce Overwatch's new damage dealers, Rourke and Fortuna, which, for the sake of time, I'll now refer to as RF. Without further ado though, Rourke is a 122-year-old detective born in the United States of America. He's a male,
Hello there.
he's Caucasian, and specifically born in San Diego, California. And finally, he's 1.8 meters tall, or around 5 feet and 11 inches high. In terms of looks, Rourke is missing his entire left arm and wears a typical 1950s tannish private detective noir outfit. Overall, his getup should look the same as this photo, which I should have on screen, minus the left arm of course. And he wears a right-handed leather shoulder holster to carry his .38 Colt Detective. He also carries a box of cigarettes and a Zippo lighter on his jacket, and finally he wears a black leather glove on his right hand. With the help of Stable Diffusion, I created some mock photos of what Rourke could look like. Okay, on the other hand, we have Fortuna, the goddess of luck. She is at least 1,000,000 years old, and she's 1.6 meters tall, or about 5 feet and 4 inches high. Visually, Fortuna's physical appearance looks that of a female Caucasian in her early 20s. She has short hair colored black and purple, and her outfit consists of a vintage Playboy bunny outfit with stockings. Instead of wearing a bunny headband, Fortuna sports a Mardi Gras style eye mask to cover the upper portion of her face. Now, although this outfit is a bit risky for a game like Overwatch, it all makes sense when I explain her background in the next section. Here are some photos of what Fortuna could look like using the AI generation tool I used. Okay, I'll do my best to keep RF's story brief since it covers both characters. Let's start with Rourke. Unlike other heroes in Overwatch, Rourke was born way back in 1915, 152 years before the events of Overwatch 2. He's a former World War II vet who lost his left arm to a grenade and was honorably discharged. Struggling to adjust after the war, he tried his hand as a private detective, but his injury made it tough. He ended up sinking into debt from borrowing money and gambling at mafia-owned casinos. Eventually, when he couldn't pay up, the mafia shot him and left him for dead in the Vegas outskirts. This is where Fortuna steps in. Also known as Lady Luck, Fortuna is the goddess of luck and balance. She's basically in charge of making sure luck stays evened out across the world. If someone gets lucky enough to hit the lottery, she'll step in to balance with a streak of bad luck, and vice versa. Right after Rourke was shot, Fortuna appeared. Moved by how the Mafia exploited his gambling addiction and by the rigged, murderous games they ran, she offered Rourke a deal. He'd get a second chance at life, but he'd have to be her vessel on Earth, bringing bad luck to the Mafia by taking them down. Since then, they've traveled through time as a vigilante team, taking down organized crime wherever they go. 5 years later, after taking out countless mobsters, Fortuna revealed that Widowmaker's great-grandfather was actually behind the hit on Rourke, and that Widowmaker still has mafia ties. So they jumped to the year 2077 to track down and confront her. Personality-wise, Rourke is all business, serious and no nonsense, while Fortuna is cheerful, bubbly, and a little mischievous. In-game, most people think Rourke has borderline schizophrenia because they can't see or hear Fortuna, so to them, it just looks like he's talking to himself. So I would consider RF a hero with a low skill ceiling and high reward depending on the player's luck. In terms of gameplay, the player will control Rourke with Fortuna assisting the player from the back. In addition, RF's entire kit revolves around drawing cards onto their hand and using them. In terms of what this would look like in the UI, I imagine Counter-Strike 2's card UI placed right above the player's ammo indicator. A selected card will be enlarged and glow white around the edges. Rourke has a base health of 225 normal health. His hitbox and walk speed is the same as McCree's. RF's passive ability is called Lady Luck. Anytime an enemy looks directly at Rourke or an enemy projectile starts to come towards Rourke within 30 meters, Fortuna will notify the player of the danger via a directional indicator on the screen. It will look similar to Call of Duty's blood indicator but glowing yellow. A single source can only trigger the passive every 5 seconds. In addition, the indicator only lasts 2 seconds on the screen. Designer notes: while this ability sounds busted since it can reveal hidden enemies and traps, I don't think it is at all. With Overwatch being such a fast-paced game, it is very unlikely that a player will catch a hidden enemy off guard due to the ever-changing flow of a fight. Also, the player will still need to be mechanically skilled to react and respond to an incoming threat, like a Sombra decloaking or a bunch of Pharah's rocket landing on the player. R's primary ability has Rourke throwing Fortuna's playing cards with his right arm. He tosses them at a rate of 5 per second and they travel as fast as Kiriko's kunai. Rourke can throw up to 7 cards before he needs to reload his hand. Each card does 35 damage with no fall off, and they come with 2 cool perks to compensate the low damage. Number 1, tagging. When a card hits an enemy, it tags them. A UI marker appears above tagged enemies, even behind walls. Hitting the same enemy repeatedly scales up the damage by 10 points per card. Only Kiriko's cleanse can remove these tags, and they'll stay active unless Rourke dies, or reloads. Number 2, recall on reload. When Rourke reloads, all his cards fly back into his hand. Any enemy tagged or caught between a returning card and Rourke takes 35 damage per card hit. Designer notes: this setup gives RF a high skill ceiling with a high reward. In the hands of a skilled player, Sleight of Hand becomes one of the best burst damage primaries in the game, only second to a fully charged Widowmaker headshot. Okay, RF's first ability is called Draw, which can be initialized by pressing the secondary fire button. If the player's hand is empty, Fortuna will do a one-handed shuffle with a deck of cards using her left hand. She will then make the card disappear by squeezing the deck. After this 1-second animation completes, 3 cards will be drawn onto the player's screen via the UI. After the player has at least 1 card in their hand, Fortuna will do a back palm card trick with her left hand, show it to the player, and burn it aflame. Once this 0.5 second animation is complete, the player will automatically activate their card ability. Although drawing a card from Fortuna's hand has no cooldown timer, drawing cards from an empty hand has an 18-second cooldown. RF's second ability is called Card Select, which can be triggered by pressing the Ability 2 key. This ability allows the player to toggle which card they want to activate from their hand. Pretty simple, right? Alright, before I continue to RF's ultimate ability, I want to clarify all the card types within Fortuna's deck. So I suggest y'all sit back, relax, and probably untap this YouTube video because I'm about to ramble. With that being said, Fortuna's cards can be broken down into 3 rarities: normal, rare, and legendary. There are 13 different types of cards. The chances of drawing a normal card are 65%, 31% for rare, and 4% for legendary. Note that a player may draw duplicate cards on a single hand. Okay, with that out of the way, let's start with the normal cards. There are 7 normal type cards. These are Call. This card spawns a small health pack in front of the player, which can heal up to 75 health points. Hit. This card activates an explosive fireball that deals 100 health points of damage and a burning debuff. The fireball projectile physically behaves the same as Pharah's rocket. Blind. This card allows the player to shoot a clone of Fortuna in the direction they're looking at. The spirit will travel up to 30 meters and phase through any wall. The spirit reveals any enemies within a 5-meter radius. All in, for the next 2 seconds, Fortuna will absorb all incoming damage for the player. The damage accumulated will be converted into ultimate charge. Sweep. Rourke shoots 7 cards at a horizontal line like a shotgun. These cards behave the same as Rourke's primary fire, as in they acquire the 2 perks that I mentioned prior hand. Flush. This card turns the player's entire hand to a singular type of card from the current deck. Activating this card with an empty hand will do nothing. Hold. A small gust of wind 5 meters in radius will appear on the floor wherever the player aims for 5 seconds. Enemies will be stunned and knocked up 15 meters into the air if they come into contact with the trap. As for the rare cards, there are 4 different types. These include Full House. This card spawns 3 Rourke AIs around RF. Unlike the player though, these Rourkes can only shoot their revolvers, move, and melee, and they cannot use their abilities. These doppelgangers last up to 8 seconds and have 200 health points each. Bluff. This card allows Rourke to fake his death whenever he takes a fatal hit. For example, damage that would normally end his HP being 0. A fake dead ragdoll will appear in his place, and Rourke will enter a wraith form for 3 seconds to escape the area. Shuffle. Activating this card allows the player to switch positions with the enemy selected on their crosshair. Ace. Fortuna shoots a cosmic empowered card that can travel through anything, walls, shields, dealing 200 damage to the enemy, 400 if crit. Basically, Fortuna shoots a railgun. Let's talk about the legendary cards, which there are 2 types of. These are River. Activating this card will make a huge glowing wall appear at Rourke's position. The wall looks like the Northern Lights, aka Aurora Borealis. While the wall lasts for 2 seconds, it provides RF and their teammates invulnerability and intangibility. While in this state, players cannot deal damage nor use their abilities. And finally, we got Dead Man's Hand. Activating this card will phase a giant ghostly vehicle in existence and travel straight 40 meters per second for 2 seconds. The vehicle will then disappear. Any enemy struck by the vehicle will be dealt 200 health points of damage and knocked back 5 meters. The large vehicle can be a model of a train, a subway, or a bus. Designer notes. My highest peak in Overwatch is Platinum, okay? So I designed most of these cards without competitive in mind, just fun factor and quick play. As a result, some of these cards may be broken or hella weak for the rarity they were placed at. Just wanted to put that out there. We're almost there, folks. Let's dive into Arv's ultimate ability, the house always wins. When activated, Fortuna does a flashy card spring trick and claps her hands together, sending 52 cards flying in all directions up to 20 meters. Then, with a snap of her fingers, all the cards explode, dealing 100 damage each. After the chain explosion, a purple antimatter blast expands up to 40 meters. While the antimatter effect doesn't hurt anyone, it rewinds RF 5 seconds back in time and erases any defeated enemy bodies, preventing Mercy from reviving them. In terms of lore, this ability lets RF remove any heroes from the current dimension, rewinding time to a point where those enemies never existed in the first place. Alright, last section, inspirations and more. The main inspiration for Rourke and Fortuna's dynamic and looks comes straight from Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth in Bioshock Infinite, especially the Burial at Sea DLC, so huge kudos to 2K Games and Irrational Games for that. When it comes to RF's abilities, I was mainly inspired by Hearthstone and Twisted Fate from League of Legends, so shout out to Blizzard and Riot Games too. As for RF's ultimate ability, it's based on the Bite the Dust move from Killer Queen. Big thanks to Araki for the awesome idea. Now onto a few interactions I imagined between Rourke, Kiriko, and Mercy. For Kiriko, I thought it'd be funny if Rourke Fortuna nudged Rourke to compliment Kiriko's kitsune. Rourke grudgingly tells Kiriko that Lady Luck finds her dog cute, and Kiriko awkwardly thanks him. With Mercy, it could start with Rourke chatting with Fortuna when Mercy chimes in, diagnosing him with multiple personality disorder. Fortuna, overhearing this, would get furious, and Rourke would have to talk her down. While I haven't come up with any skins for them yet, I thought of a couple of emotes. One could show Rourke pulling out a cigarette from his coat pocket, and then Fortuna lighting it with her fingers before he takes a drag. Another emote idea is Fortuna showing off some cardistry skills to Rourke, only for him to roll his eyes and check his watch mid-performance. Okay, if they ever thought about adding a spotlight animation for this hero, it'd be amazing to style it like a motion comic. Picture a detective noir vibe, like a 1950s comic book. The story would kick off in Monaco late at night. Overwatch gets a tip that Talon's planning to crash a big fundraising gala at the Monte Carlo casino. But when the event wraps up with no action, Kiriko, Genji, Soldier 76, and Tracer spot Rourke slipping out a back exit. They decide to follow, sensing something's up. Realizing he's being tailed, Rourke teams up with Fortuna and together they take down the Overwatch members one by one. Just when they finally corner Rourke and Fortuna in the middle of a dimly lit street, Rourke activates his ultimate ability, disappearing in a flash, leaving the team stunned and wondering what just happened. Note, the Jojolian manga, specifically the chapter where the protagonists pursue Wonder of You, is the main inspiration for this spotlight animation. And that's it. Thank you everyone for sitting around and listening to me just talk a lot of nonsense about my Overwatch heroes. If y'all really like this video, feel free to let me know in the comments, or any likes would be much appreciated. Um, Next episode is gonna be me talking about an idea for a support character, because I already talked about a tank and a damage roll, so hopefully y'all look forward to that. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you as always for supporting my channel, and y'all have a nice day. Cheers.